Hey, it's the middle of February, and believe it or not, professional football isn't done yet. You all sat back and watched Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City lead a great fourth quarter comeback to win the Super Bowl and thought, you know what? The season is done. The door is closed on football until next year, and you're moving on to other sports. But pump the brakes, because Vince McMahon is back with his billions of dollars and has set out to create yet another professional football league. He's revised. He's brought back from the dead the XFL. We might not have He Hate Me, but certainly we have professional football for the next several weeks. And of course, with that, we have DFS. Both DraftKings and FanDuel jumping into the mix here, giving us our first week one slate of football to play with. So if you're still hungry for some football, looking to get involved in some XFL, look no further than here. No Huddle Fantasy Sports. We're here to talk about just that. XFL for week one. Some of the teams, some of the coaches, what to look for in terms of the unknown, how to decipher some of this unknown, which players I'll be looking to play in week one. All of that and more is covered here. Week one DFS for the XFL. Sit back, relax, and let's enjoy a few more weeks of some professional football. Hey guys, welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Welcome back to the channel here on YouTube and our week one talk of the XFL and everything DFS related to that. But before we go much further, let's first take a moment of prayer, a moment of silence here for the XFL. Let's pray and hope that this league produces good football for the next several weeks, that this league doesn't become yet another defunct non-NFL professional league, that it doesn't follow in the footsteps of the AAF or any other league that simply could not make it and deliver great quality football. But more importantly, let's pray and hope that Vince McMahon is the savior here, that his progressive set of rules leads to some exciting football for the next several weeks, and on top of all of that, that we crush DFS with the XFL. All right, with that out of the way, we should be good to go, right? We should get great quality football for the next several weeks. The good news is here, with the XFL back, Vince McMahon, like I mentioned, over and over again, has pumped some serious money into this league. It's on major network stations. It's on Saturdays and Sundays. It's not too long of a league. There's not too many teams. There's actually quality coaches in this league. And alongside that, there's actually some NFL experienced players in this league. All good things. Hopefully, this is a sustainable league, a league that lasts and provides, like I mentioned, quality football that we can all bet on, all watch, and play fantasy football with. That said, everything starts today. February 8th, 2020, Seattle at DC. Game start at 2 p.m., followed by LA at Houston at 5 p.m. Then we have another slate, another set of two games tomorrow on Sunday. Tampa Bay at New York, again at 2 p.m., and St. Louis at Dallas at 5 p.m. There's only 8 total teams in this league, so I suspect going forward, I'm not sure if the total schedule is out yet, you're going to always get 2 games on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday, and that's how the league's going to operate. And so as I mentioned, there's 8 total teams. It's beneficial for both DFS, fantasy football, all of that, to try to get a quick understanding of what these teams are, who they're coached by, and which players are on these teams. First team I want to mention here is the Dallas Renegades. This team is, if you look into, Vegas lines, you can see they're one of the most favored teams, projected to be one of the better teams in the league. Again, if you're betting on this team, they're likely either the top or one of the top teams in terms of favorites to win the championship of the XFL. But they're coached by Bob Stoops, one of the most successful coaches in college football history, former coach of Oklahoma, retired, came out of retirement to coach Dallas. On top of that, he's paired with Landry Jones, a quarterback that has NFL experience, but not only that, a guy that he coached in college. So again, Dallas in a good spot with Bob Stoops. Air raid offense projected with his offensive coordinator, so high scoring. Good opportunity here for Dallas in general to be a good team, but beyond that, for DFS, for fantasy football, a really excellent spot for some of these players. DC Defenders, another team mentioned here, Pep Hamilton, the coach. Big name here is Cardell Jones, former quarterback for OSU, Ohio State. Jones is simply one of the biggest names in the XFL, and they're really pushing his name to get the XFL out there right now. He's paired with a guy, Presley, in the backfield, a guy that played in the AAF. He has some experience in the NFL, but played mostly in the AAF the last year. Did really well there, was one of the leading rushers, but nonetheless, this is a decent team, DC Defenders, coached by Pep Hamilton. Beyond that, we have the Houston Roughnecks, another excellent coach, in my opinion, to come into this league. That's June Jones, another guy that you've seen him have major success with quarterbacks, especially at Hawaii, where you saw Colt Brennan and former quarterbacks for Hawaii just set numerous records. If you remember back in the day, those teams just threw the ball. I think the goal of that offense was run and shoot, and they just put up major scores. So again, Houston Roughnecks, a team you can look for. Big names I think stand out here. Sammy Coates, another guy with came out, I think it was a third-round draft pick for the Steelers, played numerous seasons in the NFL, didn't really do much, but nonetheless is a guy that was sought after in the NFL, has an ability, should do well in this league. LA Wildcats, another team here, coached by Winston Moss, not necessarily as highly touted as some of these other teams like Dallas and Houston, but nonetheless, LA is set up well with QB Josh Johnson, a guy that has some NFL experience, a guy that can potentially do well in this league. We have a New York team here in the New York Guardians, coached by a longtime NFL coach in Kevin Gilbride. Quarterback Matt McGloin is really the only guy that stands out on paper. In general, the team, if you just look at Vegas things, isn't projected to do that well this season. Nonetheless, you could find some fantasy relevance in some of these players. St. Louis Battlehawks, coached by Jonathan Hayes. The big thing here is Jordan, I'm going to pronounce this probably wrong, Ta'amu has won the quarterback position. And beyond that, their backfield is one of the highest touted running backs for the XFL, and Christine Michael. He's been in the NFL for years. People have loved his athletic ability, but he really hasn't done much. Nonetheless, in a great league, should dominate with this style of competition. Seattle has a team in the Seattle Dragons, coached by Jim Zorn, quarterback Brandon Silvers. Really no one else that stands out on paper here for this team. Again, a team not necessarily projected to do that well this season, but who knows? We really just don't know right now. And finally here, the Tampa Bay Vipers, probably my favorite team in terms of uniform and just the general name. But again, who puts another team in Tampa Bay is beyond me. Mark Trestman, former head coach of the Bears, and famously known for really not doing much there. But nonetheless, quarterback Aaron Murray stands out on paper here. All these teams are led by at least a decent quarterback. And so that kind of highlights the 8 teams, their coaches, some of their experience, and what kind of stands out on paper to me from these teams, as long as their general depth chart. I've waited as long as I have to put out this video to get these depth charts right. Things have been changing. Guys are projected to be starters, aren't even on, third string. So what I have posted here is the most up-to-date, as far as I know, depth charts for each one of these teams and guys that you can look to play in DFS this week. I also wanted to touch on the difference between DraftKings and FanDuel. If you talk about the NFL, things are pretty similar outside of half-point PPR versus full-point PPR for the site. But now with the XFL, things are done a little bit differently. Everything from how guys are priced to how the rosters are set up. So you can see for DraftKings, it's quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, 2 flex, and they're using defense for the XFL. You have a typical salary, you fill it in, the whole 9 yards. But when you flip over to FanDuel, it's quite different. You can see here the roster is shorter. It's quarterback, running back, wide receiver / tight end, wide receiver / tight end, and then 2 flex spots. They are not using a defense on FanDuel. Beyond that, it's a little bit weird, and it's going to take some time to get used to. Your salary is only $100, and it's almost priced as if you ever played Yahoo for DFS for football. That's kind of how this is priced. Guys are $20, $18, $16. So it's kind of going to take a little while to get used to that, but that's the difference between the two sites. Beyond that, it's still full point PPR for DraftKings, half point PPR for FanDuel. So take it as you know it. Try to understand that it is different, quite different between the two sites. I don't know if that will remain. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to point out, DraftKings is offering their main slate is 4 games. Every team is involved Saturday and Sunday, whereas FanDuel is a split slate. You have 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow for main slates, which I don't prefer. I prefer the DraftKings format, considering there's so few. But that's just the difference between the two sites, something to consider when playing DFS moving forward with the XFL. And lastly, there's some notes I wanted to talk about before we jump into everything. First and foremost is really take it easy for week 1. There's very, very, very little information available. Everything is there was no preseason really. There were some inter-squad scrimmages, some teams played one another, did some little things, but we couldn't watch any game. All we really know are college stats and guys that had very, very, very little experience in the NFL. That's kind of what we're basing everything off of. If you look, I'm going to skip down a few lines here. Vegas is they're only posting spreads. They're picking favorite teams. Some of them are major favorites. Nonetheless, they're not offering game totals and they're not offering money lines. And the thing I have here is CDAAF. Last year when that came out, they offered some betting revolving around that, typical betting with game totals and money lines. And I believe Vegas got crushed. I think what I had heard and what I had seen was totals were around 53, 55. Because the lower level of talent, it just did not equate to that. Teams were posting, I think towards the end of that season, Vegas totals were like 35. Nonetheless, Vegas is unsure. They're going to pick their favorites, and things can drastically change very, very quickly. There's very little information available, both from a professional level in Vegas and for us here at DFS. So take that as it is. Be careful in week one and just go off what we kind of know and what we're about to talk about. The most experienced players, keep in mind, still have very minimal pro experience. You're not talking about great players here. They're good players. They're good college players. They have some experience in the NFL, but they're not professional NFL level players, at least not yet. And if you've followed the XFL at all, there are some major rule changes. These rule changes are very, very progressive, and they may increase scoring. Everybody's talking about we should see more scoring because of their rules, which may be correct. The other thing is they're focusing on game speed. They're not stopping the clock. They want to get through games faster. To me, that kind of counters a little bit. I don't know how much, to what degree, but we may not see, 80, 90-point games as some people are projecting because of that game clock. There's going to be less opportunity, less ball possessions by each team because that clock is going to continue to run. So keep that in mind if you make bets or if you're picking players and teams. There's also potential in my mind for more special team scoring in the XFL compared to the NFL, especially when you talk about kicks where teams have to line up, especially on kickoff, 5 yards apart. They can't start blocking or anything until they receive the ball, until the actual possession is made by the receiver or by the kick returner, So those things, I'm not just talking about them catching and returning for touchdowns, but they should have much better field position, which could lead to more scoring. So something to consider, guys, that we have to watch week one. Guys might be returning kicks far more often in the XFL for touchdowns, which does apply. That will matter for picking players in DFS. Last thing here is the big unknown is this double pass potential. You can potentially throw 2 forward passes. Don't know how they'll use that. There's certain players that kind of are those quarterback hybrids. There's a guy from, I believe it's Navy, playing in the XFL that was a former quarterback, now a wide receiver, could be a running back. All that comes into play. We're I don't want to pick on that right now, but it's something to pay attention to, that double pass potential. All right, so with all of that out of the way, I don't want to bore you guys anymore, but that stuff is important to consider. We're talking DFS here, you're talking real money, so I want to make sure you guys are set up in the right position here, and this is our opportunity. The last thing I want to mention here is just that. This isn't the NFL, which is established. Guys are not running they're going to make 150 lineups, don't get me wrong, but there's not a ton of data and information out there. This is your opportunity. If you're a smaller player, to really capitalize, to learn the league, learn which players, which coaches, which offenses and defense are attackable, all of that information. If you pay attention, you have a real opportunity for the first few weeks here to capitalize on this league in DFS because you can run purely off knowledge and not numbers. And so the 2 quarterbacks I want to mention here, Philip Walker is my number 1 quarterback for the weekend for week 1, $7,800 on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel. Again, we're going to have to get used to that. He's playing at home versus LA. Houston and Philip Walker are a decent favorite here at -6.5. I'm not paying too much attention to that yet, again, because there's too much unknown. Things I want to mention about him, though, he beat out Connor Cook, who was a bigger name at quarterback in this league. So that's a good sign that the team really likes him. He does have minimal experience with the Indianapolis Colts playing on their practice squad. Playing for June Jones, I mentioned him as the coach. The run and shoot offense. You could talk about Timmy Chang and Colt Brennan, quarterbacks for Hawaii that just set massive or broke records after records in college based upon that June Jones offense. So good things from a passing perspective for Walker and the situation that he's in. And he had a great career at Temple, really. 4-year starter for them, for the Temple Owls. He set numerous school passing records. So a good college quarterback. We're going to see how that plays out. I like him, especially at his cheaper price tag on DraftKings here. Beyond him, if you want to pay the money, I guess just go with Cardell Jones. He's the big name here. He's $10,200, quite expensive on DraftKings. He's also $20, which I think is the top price on FanDuel. He's playing at home, another home quarterback for Seattle. Huge favorite here at -9. Again, not too worried about that at the quarterback position right now because of how things could play out, how this league could play out being a pure passing. He's one of the highest profile and biggest name players in the XFL. I already talked about that earlier. He has limited NFL experience. They gave him a lot of chances. He was drafted, played for Buffalo, Los Angeles Chargers, and Seattle. Didn't really turn into anything, but nonetheless does have that NFL high-level experience. And then the competition, we don't know much here, but Seattle is projected as one of the worst teams in the XFL, especially their defense. I've looked at rosters. I don't know anybody on that Seattle defense. So who knows here, but Cardell Jones has a massive arm, all the potential, was drafted high, did well for Ohio State, 1.5-year starter for Ohio State, left way too early in my opinion, didn't really get to develop, but he didn't win a national championship. He's a big quarterback, tall quarterback with a powerful arm, and can use his legs a little bit. So if you want to play it safe here and have the money, play Cardell Jones. For the running back position, there's two guys I'm really looking at. The first being Cameron Artis-Payne. Both these guys, I'm looking for experience here. Artis-Payne is $6,800 on DraftKings, $19 on FanDuel. He's playing again at home versus Seattle. Dallas is a favorite of 9.5. I believe that's the biggest favorite on the board. So there's a lot of reasoning, I guess, behind Dallas, or belief that they're going to be the best team in the league. If that's the case, Artis-Payne could do really well here, playing ahead if its projections stand as they are projected. But he's one of the most pro experienced players in the XFL. That's the biggest thing I like about him. He spent 4 seasons in the NFL with the Panthers, and that's not practice squad. He actually was on their active roster. He had 118 attempts, nearly 500 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. He caught some passes out of the backfield with 86 reception yards for his NFL career. So all good things. He actually played in the NFL, got on the field, is a good player. And if you're talking about competition, this competition is much, much lower than the NFL. Someone like Artis-Payne could really dominate in this league. Beyond that, in his past, his first team All SEC 2014, playing for Auburn, had over 1,750 total yards and 13 touchdowns for Auburn, playing in the SEC, which is one of obviously the best conferences you can play for in college football. Again, Dallas is a heavy favorite here, projected as one of the better teams in the NFL. So hopefully he gets a heavy workload here. He is the top back for that Dallas Renegades team. The other guy I'm looking at is, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Jarrell Presley, $7,900 on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel. Again, another guy playing at home, heavy favorite here at -9. Does that mean anything? I don't know. Typically, that's the things we look for. Home running backs favored, playing, I mentioned already, at home versus Seattle. Seattle, not a very good team. The DC is projected to beat them by a significant amount, but he bounced around the NFL here. Different practice squads, following 4 years at University of New Mexico. Got in some trouble towards the end there with the Giants on PEDs. Maybe he's still on PEDs and they don't test for it. Let's hope for that and let's start him. But he showed flashes in the NFL, especially in preseason games. You can go look at his highlights. He had some kick returns for touchdowns. But when you're playing in the preseason, maybe that's an equivalent of an XFL league. Hopefully that's the level of competition, level of play we'll get here, at least that level. And if he was able to dominate there, maybe he can dominate in the XFL too. He was very, very impressive in the AAF, which went defunct. He was leading the league in rushing before that league went under. Again, so he has some experience at a pro level, has gotten, a running back starting role at a pro level, things that maybe can translate to the XFL here. Again, heavy favorite playing at home. He's pretty fast. He's a quick guy, 4.4 40-yard dash. And he's a bigger dude. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. Would be maybe a little bit better if he was maybe 210, 220. But nonetheless, a taller back that can run pretty quick. So some measurables that we can look to in favor of Presley here. And lastly, the wide receiver position. The guys I'm looking to play here are Sammy Coates, Freddie Martino. Sammy Coates, $9,300 on DraftKings, $20 on FanDuel. Again, pretty pricey on both sites. Playing at home versus LA. You compare him directly with Walker. Houston, a 6.5 favorite. Playing under that June Jones run and shoot offense. I like Sammy Coates. The big thing here, again, looking for guys with solid NFL experience. That's certainly what you get with Coates. He was a 3rd-round draft pick for the Steelers. Played across 4 total seasons in the NFL. Posted 29 receptions, 528 reception yards and touchdowns. A guy, again, that was drafted pretty high in the NFL, just never really turned it into much. He's an above-average size at 6'1", with explosive 4.4 speed. So, again, good measurables in his favor. Should excel at the XFL level. Offense designed around the run and shoot style. I already mentioned this. You talk about older Hawaii teams where guys were racking up catch after catch after catch. So especially on DraftKings, I like Sammy Coates. And I also wanted to get some exposure to Dallas and the Renegades here. I don't like the quarterback situation because Jones is a little banged up. But we can go literally down to the bottom price on DraftKings at $3,000 and find Freddie Martino. He is a starting wide receiver for the Dallas Renegades. $14 on FanDuel. So again, you're saving a couple bucks there. Playing at home for St. Louis. They are 9.5-point favorites. The big thing here is he's playing for Dallas, in my opinion. And Dallas is projected as that air raid offense under Bob Stoops. So all good things for wide receivers, for fantasy production out of the passing game. Freddie Martino at bare minimum. You don't need much. I don't think you do. We'll see how this league plays out. But for his measurables, what we're looking at with him, he bounced around the NFL in practice squads from 2014 to 2018. He did get some regular season run from 16 to 18 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a couple good games in there, but he posted 13 receptions for 238 yards and a touchdown. He played for the Arizona Hotshots in AAF. He's mispriced, as I mentioned. He's a starter on a team that's focused on an air raid offense. Bare minimum 3,000 on DraftKings. I like Freddie Martino. I want to get exposure to that offense, and this is how I'm doing that. And so that's really it, guys. We're talking XFL here. I only covered 2 people per position. We'll get more in depth as the season progresses and we get some statistics and we can see how offenses are formulating, which defenses are bad. All that good stuff will come to fruition here over the next several weeks. My advice to you is to be careful this weekend in week 1. I'm going with guys that have some solid experience, guys that you can probably depend on to stay in the game, be number ones, or start at quarterback. You could see things change. Guys could get benched at half times here. We really don't know. But if you stick to guys that have NFL experience, that have done it well in other professional leagues, or at least had opportunities in other leagues, I like that strategy for this week. I like picking on the teams that have the best coaches, using those players from those teams that are in air raid offenses or June Jones. All that's coming into play here. But again, be careful week 1. I hope you guys have fun this week, and I hope this video was useful to you guys. As always, if you find these videos useful, if you want to see more of this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and please share on all social media platforms. I would greatly appreciate that. It helps out here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. It helps promote the channel and continue to grow. As always, good luck this weekend, and I hope to see you atop the leaderboard.